Well, let's go ahead and get started. Hello, and welcome to this TRUCEN virtual lightning session on documenting faculty community engagement. I'm Nicole Springer. I'm the Vice President of Professional Development and Inclusive Excellence with Campus Compact. And today we will hear from colleagues across the country discuss the essential functions of metrics and data related to community engagement and their importance in sustaining and strengthening our work. Our moderator today is Jeremy Price. Jeremy is an associate professor of technology, innovation, and pedagogy, and faculty fellow in community engaged research at Indiana University, Indianapolis. His work develops infrastructures, tools, and measures that help scholars and communities document and sustain engaged research. He focuses on co-designing systems that center people and networks, bridging rigorous methodologies with meaningful impact. So without further ado, I hand this over to Jeremy.
All right, thank you, Nicole. I'm looking forward. I've been looking forward to this for quite some time. So I have to say, this conversation started. Let me start sharing my slide deck. When I sent an email out to the truck and list serve, and there was actually quite a response to how do we get faculty to report on their work? And so, uh, I got some responses, and then we decided to make it a lightning session. So let's get started. So, welcome to day one of the government being shut down, number one. But number two, we are in a very strange time for a lot of different reasons. Not the least of which is that there's actually a lot of emphasis on data that, even 5, 10 years ago was not something that was at the forefront as much as it is now. Part of that is people want to see the actual proof. This makes me look like I know a lot about Shakespeare. I actually don't. But Othello, he was when his wife was supposedly cheating on him. He said, "I want to see the ocular proof. I want to see the proof that I can see with my own eyes." Um, and so we are in a situation right now where it's the same. People want to see those numbers, those stories. It's not enough for it to actually, for the work to take place. It also needs to be documented in some way. And by the way, his wife was not cheating on him. The other thing is that we are in a state of crazy metrics. Those are numbers typically. I would say that a lot of the metrics that are often talked about in higher education are actually indicators. They're things that are counted rather than things that are calculated. And so um, the metrics that our university is holding community engaged research accountable. I have to admit that I don't even know where they came from, or even what they mean, but yet we still have to collect that information. And not, also qualitative information data as well. And so we want to be able to tell those stories of impact. That's also becoming much more important, both at public and private institutions, because these are the things that tend to drive goodwill with various government offices. This combination of metrics and stories of impact. So through all of this, for those of us who are involved in collecting that data, it becomes a matter of herding cats. As a faculty member myself, I have to say that I understand that faculty are overwhelmed with the amount of data and reporting that they have to go through, often for very different reasons. Um, from faculty annual review processes to random surveys sent out over the course of the academic year. It's hard to keep up with that, and it's also hard to provide that data. So what we have three institutions here who are going to be presenting on the ways that they collect that data. Um, We have two, and I should say that also, I believe that somewhere in here we were going to have a fourth, Susan DeQuant from University of Texas, Arlington. She recently had surgery. She's recovering well, but she's unable to participate. So we have two public universities. One is a flagship and one is not. We have a private university, and we have a really nice spread of geography across the country. So each of the presenters are going to sort of follow this outline. So the first question is why do faculty reports on community engagement matter? How are faculty reports collected currently? What successes and challenges have emerged from that collection process? And then where do we want to go next? And so my guess is that there's going to be a lot of interest in sort of the where do we want to go next. The thing that I want people to keep in mind as you think through this, though, is that that data that you collect is valuable and is value laden at the same time, especially when we're talking about relationships with members of the community. I am just going to sort of put this out there and say that this might be another good lightning session discussion, or even just a discussion if people are interested. About thinking through how that data is then stored and used and all that kind of stuff. So first to go is I'm going to stop sharing. Is It's going to be led by my colleague Sylvia Garcia at IU Indianapolis. Um, Dr. Sylvia Garcia is Director of Research and Assessment in the IU Indianapolis Office of Community Engagement. She supports the collection and dissemination of data related to community university engagement activities and conducts research that involves participation and close collaboration with community partners.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeremy. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me. So today we're going to talk about what are the systems and ways that faculty report about their community engaged activities. Primarily, we use the collaboratory. And some of you are familiar with the collaboratory. This is an online database that collects information from faculty, staff who are doing any kind of community engaged activities. The description of the collaboratory, there's a link in the document that has been created for this meeting. You can get the link from there, and I think it's at the end of the document, and you'll see a video about what the collaboratory is. Then we have elements, and elements is the way that we collect information for promotion and tenure from faculty. And it captures and combines data from multiple sources. So the manually incorporating data manually is not the main, is not really what we are looking for. We're looking for more collecting information from different databases in the university and around the country and on the web. If you have a publication out there, Elements takes this publication and put it in your profile. So all you have to do is confirm that this publication is yours. The other things that the other system where the faculty uses to report their community engagement is the IRB. We included in the IRB submission one section that collects information about if this is a community engaged research and what is the degree to where the community is embedded in the research. What is their participation in research? The other one is I use ScholarWorks, which is a repository of information about the products of the faculty. And the other that we have used in the past is Excel, which is the simplest one, but not necessarily the best one. So I'm going to explain the advantages and disadvantages of each one of them. Um, I'm going to talk a little bit more about them. So this is what faculty finds when they enter the collaboratory. So they gave the basic information of the engagement, who are the collaborators, the partners that are collaborating in this engagement, the focus area, if scholarship is related, if this is related to any educational activity like a course or research, you have to indicate that kind of information there. The goals of the engagement, where you can also indicate the products of the engagement, if there is any, but you just have to name it. You don't have to describe it, and then you submit that. One of the things that is a little bit difficult about the collaboratory as it is right now is trying to determine when you are analyzing the data. It's difficult sometimes to categorize the information based on the target population because, as you can see here, you can select any of these many options. So we have found that people find that, okay, my project is related to infants, to children, to youth, to young adults, to older adults. So it's not really as useful as we would like this to be, but at least we have that kind of information. It's also similar to areas of focus. Although we understand that partnerships are very, very much interdisciplinary, trying to determine an areas of focus is difficult when we have some of the register or some of the data that we found is one project is related to many areas. So there has been some discussion on how this can be uh, improved. But anyway, at the end of the day, what we find is that the collaboratory has very, very advantages. First of all, we get comprehensive information about engagement. We get location, and we can create stories of impact. It's open to all faculty and staff. It includes all types of engaged activities, no matter what. I mean, it doesn't have to be research. It doesn't have to be just something. Any kind of activity that includes the community can be reported to the collaboratory. Includes information about the number of engaged students, population served, outcomes, and provide ample understanding of YU engagement. But it has some limitations because it collects so much information, it can be time intensive to put all the information about the engagement in the collaboratory. That means that the reporting is irregular because it's not mandatory. So you don't want, sometimes if you are overwhelmed with your own activities, you don't want to expend more time in putting your information in the collaboratory. And since it is not linked to promotion and tenure, faculty don't feel the obligation to complete the information in the collaboratory. And the other thing that it doesn't include information about the products of the engagement, even though it collects information about general, but it doesn't collect specific information about the product. Then we have elements, which is the one that all faculty, almost all faculty report or have their profile on elements. And elements collects information about scholarly and creative work, grants and contracts, service and leadership, teaching activities. One of the advantages of elements is that the system, the people who manage the system have already created tags for community engaged research, community engagement, student engaged research. So that means that to get the information, to retrieve the information from elements, you only have to find the tags, find all the products that have been marked as community engaged research and community engagement. And from there, you can quantify how many activities or how many activities, how many professors are already doing community engagement. The system also has its advantages and disadvantages, of course. Uh, One of the advantages is that it's linked to faculty promotion and tenure. So every faculty that is on the track is obligated to complete their information, or at least to verify their information on elements. Provides information about funding, amounts and sponsors, collects information about products, and it's good to quantify activities per categories. And it gives a fair description of scholarly activities when they are included, when they are registered in the system. The disadvantage or limitation is that not all faculty report to elements. Use of tags may be arbitrary because, I mean, when we say community engagement, what do you mean by that? So the tag is there, but there is not an explanation of what it means. Information is not necessarily comprehensive enough to understand university engagement, as you can see from as we can do from the collaboratory, and data collected is limited, difficult to use for comparison and metrics about engagement because the purpose is different. This is kind of what we have found. Then the IRB report. All research that engages the community needs IRB approval, right? So we at least have some information about who is doing community engaged research and where is and with whom, and also how the partners are participating in the research. The IRB reports inform about funding and helps understand the depth of community involvement in different research stages. There's one big limitation that is only related to research. It's not related to anything else. So it has to go through the system, even though participatory evaluation, which is a community engaged activity, doesn't necessarily count as research for the IRB. So it may be excluded from being part of this report. ScholarWorks is a system that we use, as I said, to collect information, or not to collect information, to collect the products of any kind of products that the faculty wants to put out publicly through this library system. And I think Jeremy may have a better description for that, but I think I'm okay, right? So here the limitation is that it depends on what faculty considers that should be published. There is an advantage that we are talking about any kind of product. It can be a PowerPoint presentation, it can be a painting. So it can be any kind of product based on what faculty is producing. But there is a limitation that there is not a tag to identify which are community engaged research and or community engaged products, and not all faculty upload their work to ScholarWorks. And finally, Excel. We have found a great advantage of using Excel when we want a quick turnaround of information. So it can result in better response rate. It can include types of engagement. Information can be transferred to the collaboratory, and we have found that it can be ideal for annual updates, at least to have like a big picture of where we are, who are we working with, and what kind of engagement activities we are doing up there. There are of course limitations. We only collect basic information in these campaigns, to say a word. It can duplicate what faculty already report using other tools, and transferring information to collaboratory can be labor intensive. So what we have learned? We have learned that faculty feel the burden for reporting to multiple times. There are gaps in self-reporting, and keeping information updated it can be challenging. The key takeaway from all this is that even though we have multiple information sources and system and all that, they are not comprehensive. They are not but more importantly, they are not connected. So now I'm going to invite Jeremy to talk about the looking ahead. What are we? How are we thinking that we can at least address some of these challenges?
Um, yeah, so relatively briefly, and I should say also that you're going to have the opportunity to go into breakout rooms with two of the institutions as soon as we're done with our presentations to learn a little bit more. So in my role as faculty fellow, one of the things that I'm working on is how to bridge the two systems, the collaboratory and elements. Elements also is the system that faculty use for their faculty annual reviews as well as tenure and promotion. So we're looking at how those two systems can connect. Um, the um, Also, my first order of business by my new boss was to work with faculty to define specifically what community engaged research is, to provide a definition. So we have done that. For those of you who want to join us in the breakout room, I'm happy to share how that happened. And so we're going to use that definition to define the community engaged research tag in elements. The other thing is that I'm currently working on a project that uses machine learning and AI to sort of go out and look at faculty products and press releases and web pages and things like that. Scholar Works, which is our open access repository, and classify those documents as community engaged or not. Um, and and then what it does, it sort of pulls out the important pieces from those documents and compiles a report. Um, we've actually come really far on this, so I'm excited about where this is going. Um, so we can hand feed it at the moment, but we're looking into how we can scale it. So that's where we're looking in the future. Um, that's a good question. As far as I know, the answer to that question is yes. Um, Sylvia has seen those reports too. They're kind of messy, and they're and they're not. They, like Sylvia said, they do, like Elements doesn't provide all of the information that would be necessary. The other thing is that Elements as a user interface has a couple of limitations. Um, when you want to put in a partner, you can put in a partner, but you have to like scroll down to the bottom of the page and open up an accordion and sort of figure out, and it pre-populates it, and it's that pre-population I learned is based on some defunct European entity name database that so so you start typing stuff in and you get somewhere in Helsinki or something, and you're like, wait, no, that's not. So yeah, it's not, they don't make it easy, let me just put it that way. And when you're rushing to put in your faculty annual review materials, you're not really thinking about that kind of information, because that's not what's being reviewed for that particular time. So thank you. Okay, so since this is a lightning session, we're gonna keep it going at a rapid pace, and like I said, we'll have time to have more one-on-one discussions, or many to one or many to two. We are gonna go in now. We're gonna join Julie Plout from Brown University. Dr. Plout joined Brown University's Swearer Center in 2018. Her role focuses on advancing community engaged research and teaching through work with faculty, academic units, and institutional policy and culture change. She previously led Minnesota Campus Compact, so she appreciates the strengths of all types of colleges and universities, even as she has enjoyed diving deep at one. The answer to the question is yes, you should have access to the slides. So, Julie.
And the links for them, I think, are all in the document that's shared. So thanks everybody for the chance to reflect with you today, and thanks Sylvia and Jeremy. I'm sure there will be themes evident to all of you as I run through this. Because my role focuses on faculty, I'm speaking with you today, but I just want to say before I start that everything I talk about reflects many other people's work as well. And I'll start with a short story that for me captures why this matters. Recently, a faculty member reached out to me. She wanted to connect with the only national natural history museum in Rhode Island. She didn't have a relationship with them, and the Swear Center doesn't actually have an active partnership with them either. But when I was able to look in our current tracking system, I could tell her that a colleague in her own department was already connected with that museum. She knew the faculty member, but she had no idea about her local engagement. So I'm guessing you're all here because you're committed to collaborative work, and you may have also experienced incidents that show that sometimes we need to overcome silos and silences that exist within our institution, as well as coordinate efforts more effectively with organizations outside of the campus. And especially in a small city and state like Providence and Rhode Island, community members and partners get frustrated when a relatively big and wealthy institution doesn't know about its own internal work and what's going on across campus. So part of what we're aiming to do with our data collection and usage is to document and support community engagement more effectively across the institution in ways that are beneficial to community organizations, but also beneficial ultimately to the folks on campus who don't have to start from scratch, don't have to work in isolation, et cetera. And so when we're thinking about data, it's partly about accountability to our partners, to our stated goals and values. It's also to the city of Providence. Because we're a private institution, we have a pilot agreement, payment in lieu of taxes. And part of that agreement is that we submit an annual community benefits report. So those are some of the reasons for, in terms of accountability and reporting, but also inspiration, making high quality engaged work more visible. It matters all the time, and perhaps especially now when people need and want to feel a sense of agency. They want to see reasons for hope. They want to see opportunities for positive action and collaboration. There's a lot going on in the world that doesn't get covered by the news media. And also, we ultimately are seeking to contribute to change. And it's both change, as I said, in how we operate within the university, but then also ultimately contributing to positive change on issues like educational equity and environmental sustainability and economic opportunity. I have put lots of words on slides because you will have access to the slides and can follow up, and I'm happy to talk in the smaller groups later about anything you have questions about. But for now, in terms of the ways that we collect data about faculty engagement, the key is that we're trying to use existing systems as much as possible, and there is often relevant data already being collected somehow. And a couple that I'd name that go beyond the Swear Center's programs. One is the Division of Research at Brown is able to share with us, information about the research grants that include subcontracts either from or to Brown that involve other entities within Rhode Island, because we are focused primarily on Rhode Island partnerships. there's some information that we know exists that we don't yet have access to, and we continue to work on that. So HR, for instance, knows about what staff and faculty at Brown serve on what local nonprofit boards, because that's collected in our conflict of interest reports. And so far, we've been able to get a list of just the organizations that have someone from Brown serving on their board, but we're hoping eventually to get access to the identified data as well, so that we can, again, build on relationships that already exist. In the meantime, one major source of information about faculty engagement is the annual faculty activity report, which most faculty have to fill out every year and submit to the Office of the Dean of the Faculty. This is the open-ended prompt that appears in that form. It's not a required form, although a required question, although the form is required. So I would say typically over the last 8 years, about 20% of the regular faculty have shared something in response to that question. And just quickly in terms of the benefits, this will sound familiar based on compared to what Sylvia was talking about. This is an existing process that most faculty have to complete, and it does signal some support from the university leadership. It's something we can have access to, but they tend to be short responses. Not all of them are work that we would consider community engagement, whether it's community engaged research, community engaged teaching, other kinds of partnerships. But oftentimes we need to do some follow-up if we actually want to know sort of what is the nature of the partnership, what are the organizational partners involved, what have the results been, and so forth. More recently, the Swear Center started using Salesforce to try and track community engagement across constituencies and domains. This is something that can be used for many different purposes. Reporting is certainly something that we care about, but again, a primary purpose for us is thinking about how we can mobilize campus resources to address community identified priorities in a more coordinated way. So or community-based folks can submit their priorities, their requests for collaboration into the system through a form assembly form. And then we're paying attention to that and trying to mobilize people on campus, identifying appropriate resources and seeing where we can support a partnership. And one thing I will say, we use the word coordinate a lot. We do reassure people when we need to that it's not about centralizing, it's not about controlling. It is just very much about supporting more effective and ethical kind of partnerships that are not going to be burdensome for anybody. And so I won't go into the details about how our Salesforce system is structured, though I'm happy to answer questions or share other information another time or, in the breakout. Our system was informed in part by the University of Michigan's system because our executive director came from the Ginsberg Center. And so I think got a lot of good support from them as we were developing our system. But it's sort of a complicated structure where you've got individual contacts of various kinds. You've got community-based organizations. You've got specific initiatives or projects from those organizations. You've got campus units. You've got specific institutional resources, which might be an engaged course, a research project, fellowship, et cetera. And then you've got matches where a specific resource and a specific initiative are matched. And again, behind the tracking system is this reorientation where we're trying to be a center and a university that can say, not just, we have 70 active community partners, but we can be looking at what are the organizations. Again, Rhode Island has 1.1 million people. There are a lot of nonprofit organizations, but there are not so many that we don't have organizations with multiple connections already at Brown. And We want to be looking at which of those organizations already have lots of connections. How can we be coordinating ourselves so that we're having the greatest collective impact in working well with them? Or if one person has a relationship with a new organization, and that organization has a priority that that person can't address, but the organization would be interested in collaborating with others at Brown, we want to capture that data, that the idea that this organization has, so that we can then be identifying other potential partners. So like I said, people off campus as well as on campus can submit information directly into the system. And I would say similar, it sounds like, to the collaboratory form. It's a fairly extensive form, so it can take a lot of time for people to submit. But there are also, I would say, most of the data that we have in Salesforce has come from various staff, including student staff who have licenses to enter that information. And it might come from lots of different ways: meetings, public stories, the FAR data, et cetera. And as the story I told at the beginning illustrates, I think we are beginning to see benefits from it in terms of being able to mobilize people in response to the community identified priorities and to support more connected work among engaged scholars on campus. I won't talk through all of the limitations. I'm guessing that no matter what your own systems for tracking are, that you would see the same challenges. And Sylvia, again, you named these, like the data is never going to be comprehensive or fully up to date because things are always changing. Technology doesn't work without humans. And, I'll note, I guess, on the issue of trust, that there have been faculty voices that, well, if I share my information in Salesforce, is the university going to talk about my work to raise money for itself? Or is there a risk that that somebody is going to be connected to an organization that I've developed this really strong relationship with, but that other person might not be as good a partner, and so they might jeopardize my collaboration by putting this information in a shared space. So we are, as we develop the system, we're also developing the communications about how is it going to be used, what's the value to people in sharing information, what can we reassure them about if they have concerns about it. And the work moving forward, there's obviously continuing to enhance the information that we have within Salesforce, integrating. Again, another theme from our different presentations is this idea of integrating different sources. And then again, using it to really inform quality work and assess how we're doing with matchmaking, mobilizing, coordinating, also how we can be identifying positive stories of impact, building on those strengths, working on shared knowledge and effort across units, which is probably also a common issue. And then that final bullet is meant to say, in terms of faculty engagement and documentation, one of the major factors, or one of the, as Sylvia was saying, one of the major activities that they have to be, the faculty have to be presenting their work for promotion and tenure, or for continued employment if they're not in a tenure line role. And so we're thinking of this piece as one element of a larger kind of campus community engagement agenda, where addressing institutional roles and rewards is part of it. We have a community engagement council. One of its committees on engaged scholarship last year made recommendations for a task force to develop metrics and recommendations about changes in how we document and recognize community engaged scholarship. We have that council also has an assessment and impact committee that's looking at how we assess and capture impact across the board. So this is really one small piece, I would say, of a larger mission-driven effort. I'm sure the same is true for others, but I'll just emphasize that as I close and look forward to hearing more from others and talking with you on the breakout.
All right, thank you, Julie. So up next is Ole Miss, University of Mississippi. Last but certainly not least, Dr. Cade Smith serves as Assistant Vice Chancellor for Access and Community Engagement at the University of Mississippi. He has worked in higher education for 34 years, 15 years as an engaged agricultural scientist, and 19 years as a community engaged administrator. Dr. Cassell Sweet is Director of Community Engagement and Assistant Professor of Practice in Community Engagement at the University of Mississippi. She has worked with faculty to support community engaged efforts. So please, thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. We really appreciate, Castell and I really appreciate the opportunity to present to everyone today. And you're going to hear a lot of the same themes because we're in the same business. And so just a little bit about the University of Mississippi. We're a moderately large public R1 institution in the rural South. For campus context, we gained R1 status in 2016. Our history with the Carnegie Community Engagement Classification started with an unsuccessful application in 2010. The university didn't feel that it was prepared to have a successful venture in 2015. And that insecurity, the desire to hold that status, that classification, was the impetus really for creating the Division of Diversity and Community Engagement, which has evolved into the Division of Access, Opportunity, and Community Engagement, including the hiring of me, the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Access and Community Engagement in 2018, and then the creation of our Center for Community Engagement, which Dr. Sweet leads in 2020. About 90% of my work is focused internally, and really exciting things like faculty activity reports, transmittal sheets, faculty promotion and tenure policies. And then Dr. Sweet, I would say about 70% of her work is focused outward, working with community partners and engaging faculty, staff, students with partnerships. And the mission for our center is really to to elevate, celebrate, and sustain the great work of community engaged practitioners, both in the community and in the university. So it's really a big tent, open arms approach for doing this type of work.
And so in thinking about the work that we are doing, we wanted to make sure that it aligned with our goals of being Carnegie classified, as Dr. Smith just mentioned. So thinking about getting prepared for this upcoming, or we've went through the process, reclassification, wanted to really hinge on a lot of the recommendations that came from that 2020 classification process. So in thinking about that and preparing for 2025, 2026, you can kind of see here are the grades where we assessed ourselves on the work and the progress that we've made over the last 5 years, and where we also know that more improvement and more work needs to be done. And so ironically, you'll see grade D is tracking and assessing of community engagement, which is why we were invested in this conversation of there's some things that we know we're doing, but there's still room for growth. And it's going to echo a lot of the previous presenters' comments on how can we better track and really understand what's happening, documenting the activities that are going on in a way that we can tell the complete story of engagement on our campus and in our community. So the faculty activity report, as mentioned by others, is done every year for faculty. So that opens up around December and it's submitted by January. And so thinking about, they're already submitting the activities and the things that they're doing. So currently there is a checkbox question. This checkbox question was added recently when Dr. Smith was adding his role as Assistant Vice Chancellor. And so asking folks to, as they're putting in different activities, whether that's research, presentations, any of their activities that they're doing in their role as a faculty member, asking an additional question of, are they partnering with non-higher education collaborators? So just trying to, at the simplest form, gathering what kind of activities are folks doing that's done in partnership with someone external to campus. And then you'll see kind of later in our conversation today, kind of what are the goals and the next steps of extending beyond this general low stakes question here.
So just to reiterate some things we've heard earlier, the approach that we took is what marginal improvements can we make that ask very little of faculty so that we can know what faculty are doing better. Why it matters, why we track is the practicality of we need to do it to maintain our classification. That creates the institutional urgency to move resources to do this better over time. It's also incredibly important because faculty need to be recognized for the outstanding work that they're doing, enriching learning, informing research, and doing empowering service across our state, nation, and the globe. And then finally, as you've heard Reese with our other presenters, the institution wants to be able to tell its public sector impact, its economic impact of the work that faculty, staff, and students are doing comprehensively. So if you look at an output, and right now this is administrators can log in and see these types of results, but they're not. The primary users of this is me, and it's so that we can document what we're doing and think about how we can have a better future state. So we can sort this by department, or discipline, or type of artifact. And so this report is just the number of artifacts for 2024 reported by all of our faculty and staff that use this system. You can see that arts, exhibition, musical compositions, commissioned work, video and film have a large proportion of community engaged artifacts. Those could be classes, they could be scholarly outputs or service engagements. So this is what we're doing right now, and we hope to build upon this future state. We have that same low assumptions, low threshold question about prospective partners being involved in the transmittal sheet. So whenever a faculty or staff member proposes a grant with their Office of Research and Economic Development, that transmittal sheet will have that same question. And you can see that community engaged proposals account for about 12% of the research proposals at the University of Mississippi in the 2023 calendar year, and contributed about 14% of the proposed research dollars. So this is just a great way to contextualize both the scope and the impact and what scholars are considering doing community engaged work. And then we can track those grants that are actually funded and developed over time.
So I would kind of continue in the conversation too that Julie started about the importance of tracking and documenting, particularly for tenure promotion. So thinking about that, of the question of why asking faculty members to share the things that they have going on and the engagement that they're doing, it's also to help, as Dr. Smith just mentioned, celebrate and elevate the amazing work that they're doing in their units. And so thinking about tenure promotion policies, they're existing currently at the University of Mississippi. Tenure promotion policies and changes and edits rest at the department level. And so that's important for us to think about. And so that's why you see here that number of there are 28 different department policies, 6 different school policies, and then 1 university policy. But with the bulk of the policy, the meat of policies that faculty are kind of being referenced to is held at the department level. So looking at the policies that exist at our institution, there are about 3 that have a more ideally framed community engagement. So it talks about the methods that they're using, community engagement as a method that they're using to advance their scholarship, their learning, their creative research, and whatever the case may be for their particular discipline. There's 19 departments, 2 schools, and then our university policy that has it more minimally framed of saying it's a type of service. So limiting it to the service and not really expanding it to the other areas, but it is included there. And it's also referenced in terms of the language in different terms. So we have some examples of some of the terms that are used, such as service, public service, civic engagement, or community engagement. And then there are 9 departments and 3 schools that do not reference community engagement at all. And so acknowledging the fact that the faculty activity reports are being used and compiled to support tenure promotion packets, understanding the relationship between the two of those kind of really help guide the conversation as well.
Dr. Sweet, I think this is your slide as well.
So the Community Engaged Fellows program is something that was started through the center. Recently, we are now in our third cohort of fellows. And so it's an interdisciplinary cohort, really a community of practice. So thinking about the ways that they are coming together to support each other, but also a space where they feel seen, recognized, and helping them think through their work, whether that's through teaching. So there's 3 different tracks they can opt into: teaching, research, or programmatic. And so how are they thinking about the community engagement work that they're doing in those areas? How do they deepen that? But then how is that also in a way that they're thinking about connecting it back to the other documentation that they are doing as faculty members? So it currently is a 1-year long commitment. There are 5 fellows each year. We do a May retreat. It's week long, where we really do a deep dive in community engagement practices, methodologies, literature, all of those concepts as a cohort. And then we meet throughout the semester once a month to both hear about resources that exist on our campus to support their engagement practice, but also for them to work through projects and really support each other and the community of practice through the projects that they are focused on for that year. And so that's something that we have been excited to see. We've learned a lot about the work that our faculty members are doing through these cohort of fellows. And they're able to identify who's doing what across campus because it is interdisciplinary. And so giving them a space where they're coming together, meeting other faculty from other schools, other fields, and really exposing their network of the folks that are doing community engagement and how they're navigating it in terms of their own documentation and progress and success as faculty and staff on our campus.
Dr. Sweet.
And then Community Engagement Week is another thing that we've added too, as we started learning about the amazing work that is happening at our institution. So really dedicating a week in April to highlight the work that's happening. So highlighting that through various forms. We have a typical that many campuses have an award ceremony. So we call that the celebration of service, where we're giving out our awards for the year that's recognizing partnerships, that's recognizing community engaged excellence. So different projects and activities that are happening. Our Council on Community Engagement each year for the last 2 years has also given an update on community engagement at our campus. So this past year, it was a presentation on the findings and the things that came as a result of our Carnegie self-study this past spring, or well, really the whole year, but it was shared this spring to share back with campus the things that we were uncovering and kind of documenting and including in that application. And then a time for the fellows and other students to showcase the work that they're doing, and then also reflect on their process of how they are engaging in activities. And it also includes, we have a poster session just to highlight the various types of partnerships that are taking place, the different types of community engagement activities. And so it was another way for us to really understand who's doing what, but also to showcase that. And so understanding that community engagement takes a variety of different forms. And so how do we make those things available and highlight them across campus?
So when we think about the barriers to doing this well and having the impact on elevating and celebrating the work of our faculty, I think our greatest barrier is the decentralized systems of how tracking and policies are done. And that is a cultural feature of our institution, and we're not trying to change that. So we're not trying to centralize this authority and require people to do things differently than they've always done. We're supporting their revision and examination of those processes. Another barrier is the politicization of what is community engagement. And this can be both an identity or an accusation, depending on what social and political perspectives the faculty member or the community member holds. And so that has been a barrier. And then you heard earlier that the perception of threats to the vitality or the sanctity of a partnership. And I see that almost as paternalism and fear. And one of the things that Castell is doing great is really developing trust field partnerships that are openly held and conflict resilient. And we invite faculty members to proxy into and out of those partnerships. Then we have a poor classification system for community engaged learning. And then we're looking to expand our support of our community engaged fellows by adding 2 senior fellows that would be a 2-year appointment with a significant administrative stipend. One of them focused on research, the second one focused on teaching and learning. And then our data usage, I tell you what, Jeremy, I think we'll just stop here. We've got a couple of more slides, but we're out of time, so we'll just stop here.